Annie stood at the foot of the bed for a long moment, hands resting on the worn quilt, steadying herself. The morning light crept in through the window, soft and pale. She dressed slowly, like she was afraid moving too fast might break something. Tony and Ramona were already in the basement when she came down. "I want to try," Annie said quietly. "I need to hear him, or at least know I tried." Tony nodded and slid his chair back. "I'll show you what to do." He explained the knobs, the channel, how to hold the mic. Annie listened, but her heart was already racing. What if it wasn't real? What if they'd imagined it? What if she spoke into the radio and nothing answered back? Cheyenne lingered at the doorway. "I'll stay here with Lane and Maverick," she said. "You go on." Annie sat down in front of the radio. Her hands trembled just enough that Tony noticed, but he didn't say anything. He simply stepped back and gave her space. She picked up the mic. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then, softly, almost afraid of being heard, she said, "Hondo, baby, do you hear me?" The radio hissed. Static washed over the room. The CB crackled faintly, buried under engine noise and wind. Hondo barely caught it at first, just a sound, a shape of a voice. Then it hit him. Her voice. There was no mistaking it. Hondo slammed on the brakes. The truck lurched to a stop, Atlas scrambling upright as gravel sprayed beneath the tires. "Annie." Hondo grabbed the mic with both hands. "Baby, do you hear me? This is Hondo." Back in the basement, Annie gasped. Tears spilled freely now as she pressed the mic close. "Yes," she said through sobs. "Yes, I hear you. I hear you, Hondo." The sound of her voice, real, alive, nearly broke him. His chest tightened, breath catching as everything he'd been holding back crashed down at once. She was alive. They were safe. "I'm coming," he said, voice thick. "I'm on my way." The signal wavered. Static surged, swallowing the words. "Hondo." Annie cried. "Hondo, I." The radio fell silent. Hondo stared at the mic, heart pounding, the cab suddenly too quiet. Annie lowered the mic slowly, tears still falling, hands shaking. They'd lost the signal. But this time, it didn't feel like loss. They had heard each other, and that was enough to keep going. The CB went quiet again, the last trace of Annie's voice swallowed by static. Hondo held the mic a second longer than he needed to, thumbs still pressed against the worn plastic like he could force the sound back through it. Then he sat down carefully, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "She's alive," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Joyce smiled, relief softening her face. "I never doubted it." Dink let out a long breath and leaned back in his seat. "Well, hell, that's the best news I've heard all day." The power wagon rolled north, steady and sure. For the first time since everything had gone dark, the cab felt lighter. Hondo talked more now, about hot springs, about the old farmhouse, about his friend on the radio. "Tony," he said, glancing at Joyce. "Folks call him Two Guns. Carries one on each hip like he's still living in the Wild West." Joyce chuckled. "Sounds charming." "He means well," Hondo said. "Just loud about it." Atlas lay stretched out on the floorboard, head up, ears flicking at every change in sound. He wasn't relaxed, but he wasn't tense either, working the way he always did. They were close now. Close enough that Hondo could almost picture Annie standing on the porch, Lane waiting to hear the truck, Maverick running barefoot through the yard. That was why none of them noticed it at first. The tree lay across the highway like it had always belonged there, thick trunk, branches tangled, blocking both lanes. Hondo eased off the gas and slowed. "Well, damn," Dink muttered. "That ain't convenient." Hondo scanned ahead, then spotted the narrow dirt road just before the tree line, a thin cut through the brush that looked barely used. "That'll go around," he said. He turned the wheel and eased the power wagon onto the dirt without hesitation. No one said a word about how clean the cut was. No one mentioned the way the trunk had fallen too neatly. They were already past it, hope pulling them forward. The dirt road wound through trees, the canopy closing in overhead. Dust kicked up behind them, hanging in the still air. A few minutes in, the feeling hit Hondo. That quiet pressure in his gut, the one he trusted more than his eyes. He slowed. Atlas shifted, ears angling back, then forward again. Hondo brought the truck to a stop. "What's wrong?" Joyce asked. "Not sure yet," Hondo said. He looked at Dink. "You drive." Dink blinked. "Me?" "Yeah," Hondo said, already reaching for his gear. "Keep going. There's a bend up ahead. I'll meet you there." Joyce frowned. "Hondo." He turned to her and pulled a folded map from the console, pressing it into her hands. He pointed quickly, precise. We're here. Farm's here. Follow this road north, then cut west. If I'm not back in 2 hours, don't wait. Joyce's face hardened. We won't. Hondo knelt and gripped Atlas by the thick fur at his chest. Stay with them, he said firmly. Guard the truck. Atlas whined once, low and unhappy. Atlas, Hondo said again. The dog stilled. Obeyed. Hondo stood, shouldered his rifle, and gave Dink a small smile. I'll catch you later, old man. Dink snorted. I'll show you old. The power wagon rolled forward, leaving Hondo standing alone in the dust. The woods swallowed him fast. The truth didn't come out all at once. It came in pieces. Annie sat at the kitchen table while Joyce talked, her voice steady but careful, like she was choosing each word so it wouldn't cut too deep. Dink stood near the counter, hat in his hands, turning it over and over, pacing when he couldn't stand still anymore. Every so often he'd jump in to add something Joyce left out, then trail off like he'd said too much. The city, the gunfire, the woods, the dirt road that shouldn't have been there. Annie didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. She kept her hands folded tight in her lap, listening, eyes fixed on a knot in the wood grain of the table, like it might give her answers if she stared long enough. So he just sent y'all on? Cheyenne finally asked, her voice quiet. Like that? Joyce nodded once. He didn't hesitate. That hurt worse than anything else Joyce said. Dylan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. That means he knew. Knew what? Cheyenne asked. That he might not be coming back, Dylan said. No one argued. Outside, Atlas lay on the porch, head up, eyes locked on the driveway. Every now and then he lifted his nose and tested the wind, tail thumping once before going still again. He didn't pace. He didn't whine. He waited. Night settled in slow and heavy, pressing against the farmhouse until it felt smaller than it ever had before. No one talked about plans. No one said what they were all thinking. They were still waiting to see if the world would give Hondo back on its own. Hondo woke to voices. Low voices. Calm voices. Not the sound of panic. Canvas snapped somewhere nearby. Boots crunched over gravel. Pine and old fuel hung thick in the air. When he tried to move, a sharp pain flared behind his eyes, and a hand pressed him back down. Easy, someone said. You're alive. That much, at least, was true. His wrists were bound in front of him, zip ties biting just enough to remind him not to test them. Blood had dried along the side of his head. His rifle was gone. His pistol, too. The knife he always carried wasn't where it should have been. As his vision cleared, the camp came into focus. Tents set with purpose. Vehicles parked in a loose perimeter, not sloppy, not rushed. Men moving in pairs, talking low, checking gear. No yelling. No confusion. This wasn't a mob. This was organized. A man stepped into view, older than most of the others. Gray threaded through his hair, posture straight, movements economical. He studied Hondo like he was reading a report instead of looking at a man. You caused some trouble on the road, the man said. I was passing through, Hondo replied. The man nodded slowly, like that told him something he already suspected. You're careful. That makes people nervous. Hondo said nothing. The man watched him another moment, then straightened. I've sent word to someone who'll want to speak with you. Who's that? Hondo asked. The man's mouth twitched, just barely. Someone who makes decisions. He turned and walked away, leaving Hondo staring up through the trees, listening to the sounds of a camp that knew exactly what it was doing. 2 days passed at the farmhouse. No engines, no radio traffic, no sign of movement on the road. Annie stopped counting time somewhere around the second night. Tony's truck came up the drive mid-morning on the third day, Ramona riding with him. Annie knew before they even stepped out that they weren't bringing good news. Tony talked before the door even closed behind him. It's real, he said. The militia. Joyce stiffened. You're sure? Tony nodded. Ain't rumors anymore. They're organized. Patrolling roads. Setting traps. Who's running it? Dylan asked. Tony hesitated just long enough for the name to matter. Colonel William Evans, he said. Retired Army. Career officer. Folks say he's disciplined. Thinks he's holding things together. By force, Cheyenne said. Tony shrugged. By whatever works. Annie didn't say anything. She stood and walked to the window, looking out across the field toward the trees beyond it. Hot Springs wasn't far. Too close. On the porch, Atlas rose to his feet and stared down the drive again, ears forward, body still. Waiting. Hondo heard the engines before he saw him. Not revving. Not loud. Just steady, controlled. The kind of sound that told you whoever was coming didn't need to announce themselves. The camp shifted almost immediately. Not scrambling, not stiffening. Just adjusting. Men straightened. Conversations ended mid-sentence. A few moved to new positions without being told. Whoever this was, he didn't need to raise his voice. A dark pickup rolled through the trees and stopped short of the central fire ring. Dust settled slow around the tires. The door opened. Colonel William Evans stepped out like he was arriving for a briefing, not walking into a makeshift camp in the middle of a broken country. He wore fatigues that had seen real use, clean but not new. No sidearm visible, though Hondo doubted that meant much. Gray hair cut short, face line not tired, eyes sharp in a way that didn't come from fear or anger. He took in the camp with a glance. Then his eyes found Hondo. Evans walked over without hurry, boots crunching soft on gravel. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to speak, without raising his voice. "So," Evans said, calm as a man reading a weather report, "you're the one who caused my road patrol some trouble." Hondo shifted slightly, the zip ties biting into his wrists. "Wasn't looking for trouble." Evans nodded. "Nobody ever is." He crouched down, so they were eye level, hands resting on his knees. "But you didn't panic. You didn't run blind. And you didn't die." He studied Hondo's face, lingering on the dried blood, the set of his jaw. "That tells me something." Hondo met his gaze. Didn't flinch. Didn't look away. "What does it tell you?" he asked. "That you're not a drifter," Evans said. "Not a looter. Not someone acting on impulse." He stood back up. "You planned your movements. You measured risk. That makes you dangerous or useful." Hondo stayed quiet. Evans turned his head slightly, addressing the man who'd first questioned Hondo. "Untie him." The man hesitated just a fraction of a second. Evans didn't look back. "I didn't say arm him. I said untie him." The zip ties were cut. Blood rushed back into Hondo's hands, sharp and painful. He flexed his fingers slowly, eyes never leaving Evans. "You'll get your weapons back if you earn them," Evans said, as if reading his thoughts. "Or you'll leave without them if you don't." "Leave where?" Hondo asked. Evans gave a thin smile. "Anywhere you like. This country's still wide open." The smile faded just as fast. "For now." They stood there a moment, the sounds of the camp filling the space between them. "You have people," Evans said suddenly. It wasn't a question. Hondo didn't answer. Evans nodded anyway. "Family, I'd guess. Somewhere close enough you didn't want to draw attention on the road." He folded his hands behind his back. "That's why you didn't shoot first." Hondo felt it then, a subtle tightening in his chest. Not fear. Calculation. "Here's the truth," Evans continued. "Things are falling apart faster than most folks can keep up with. Law without structure becomes cruelty. Freedom without order becomes chaos." He looked out toward the trees, then back at Hondo. "I won't let that happen here." "And you think tying people up fixes that?" Hondo said. Evans didn't bristle. Didn't snap. "No," he said evenly. "But knowing who they are before I let them walk free does." He stepped closer again. "I'm offering you a choice. Stay a day or two. Talk. Let me decide if you're a threat or someone who understands how things work now." "And if I don't?" Hondo asked. Evans met his eyes. "Then you walk out of here alive." A pause. Unarmed. And watched. The wind moved through the pines overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a radio crackled once, then went quiet. Hondo thought of Annie. Of the porch. Of Atlas waiting with his head up. "I'll stay," Hondo said. Evans nodded, satisfied but not relieved. "Good." He turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing," Evans said over his shoulder. "If you lie to me, I'll know. And if you try to leave without saying goodbye," he glanced back, eyes hard now, "we'll both regret it." Evans walked away, the camp settling back into motion around him. Hondo sat there, rubbing feeling back into his wrists, watching the trees. Waiting was almost over.